In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
Hello, beautiful friends. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Claudine.
And this is Shokran Very Much, the podcast. And this week's episode is called Journey Through Time.
I think these conversations are just so important. And it's very nice to, like, meet people who are passionate about things that aren't.
Doctor, engineer.
Yeah. we call them the big five. The ones that the parents are like, oh, you're going to go major business, medicine, engineering,
lawyer.
What's the fifth one?
Yeah, what is the fifth one?
What is the fifth one?
Because business wasn't an option when I was younger. So
Really?
Yeah.
No, my mom actually wanted me to get into business.
Yeah. Oh, the fifth was monasticism. Because he said if you don't choose these four, then you gotta become a monk. Yeah.
Which is not aware of that.
So unfortunate because monasticism is really very beautiful, and I don't think we recognize it for the call it really is. Like, forcing people into a choice is like, it's not it. It's really not it. Like, monastic life is beautiful. Like, let it be beautiful. Don't let it be like, if you're not successful in the world, then like, that idea is so wrong.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see that too in all the monasteries. We see people that were very successful in the world.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of our bishops who were doctors, like, they were very successful people, and they just chose to leave it all. Abunas too. Yeah. Well, this is a perfect transition to this question. It's out of order, but...
Oh, what role did monasticism play in the spread and preservation of Christianity in the Middle East during pivotal periods of history?
The way you read that is so funny.
I felt like...
it was giving an announcer.
Like, when we were typing it out, it wasn't, like, so serious. And then now that I'm reading it, I'm like, whoa, this is, like... It needs, like, a little bow at the end.
I worded it very...
Actually, yeah. Monasticism played a huge role. Egypt is credited with being, like, a very important monastic center.
Yeah.
Right. And we always say St. Anthony's the father of all monks. But when we read his story, we realized he learned monasticism from an elder himself.
Yes.
Right. So there were people going out into the desert before St. Anthony who lived a life of asceticism. I think, St. Anthony gets this beautiful epithet because Athanasius meets him and writes about him, and that's how the rest of the world knows about him. And it was a best-selling work in late antiquity, the life of Antony. And even to this day, I think when all of us read it, we're like, wait, should I do this? It's like, it's a very inspiring text. So monasticism plays a huge role. We can't exactly say where it starts. In Egypt, it looks a little bit different than it looks in Syria, than it looks in Jerusalem. But in all three places, I'd say, like, at about the same time, you have people doing the same kind of thing. And Egypt is important because you had a lot of people from the late Roman Empire passing through on, so they'd, like, go to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage, right? But they'd also pass through Egypt to see some of the places that the Holy Family visited. And then from there, they'd go see some monastic elders, right? You had around the time of, so Antony is like the 300s. And then you had Pachomius too, Saint Pachomius, and then Saint Shenouda in the 400s. And those two built humongous monastic centers, right? They were, like, all encompassing. And the rule, at least for Pachomius, who, like, institutes rules, is that monks have to be educated. You have to learn how to read.
Wow. And
so in the life of Pachomius, though, we realize that it's not just Egyptians who become monks. They were, his life attests to the presence of Greeks and Armenians. So you had people from all over the empire coming through. This is a really great question, because if we, like, widen our lens a little bit and look at North Africa, like we were just discussing North Africa, right? Christianity in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, like, ancient apostolic Christianity is completely obliterated when the Arabs come, by the time the Arabs come. And Christianity only survives in Egypt.
Yeah.
And I'd say monasticism and martyrdom, I'd say, are, like, the two two important reasons why it survives the way it does when it's like if you find Christians from these other countries today, they are the product of Catholic mission in the early modern period. So maybe like starting this 17th century, 18th century. But Carthage was a very important center, right? I'm not exactly sure where Augustine was bishop. I want to say...
wait, he was in Tunisia, I think.
Okay, so Carthage.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not an expert, but I do believe that St. Monica and St. Augustine were in Tunisia. That's my belief.
No, I think so. I remember saying that. Something like that. So Carthage is close to modern-day Tunis, right? But yeah, you had Augustine as a bishop, right, who I would imagine was a pretty influential bishop, and then nobody in a couple generations. So that's, I'd say that monasticism plays a pivotal role in preserving Christianity in Egypt. And monasteries were...
Oh, I don't know. Here it says Algeria.
Algeria.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Because I remember it was Algeria.
Hippo. Now.
Okay. Oh, you remember. Why did you say something?
I don't know. I felt like she said it so confidently, so I was like,
no,
okay.
Because I think
Carthage was an important Christian center, so that's why I was thinking Tunisia, Tunis, but...
Yeah, so St. Monica was in Tunisia, but St. Augustine was bishop in Algeria.
In Algeria. Okay.
That's where
modern
it came
day
from,
Algeria. Yeah. Which is... Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, so monasticism plays a huge role. The monasteries, though, like themselves, if you study just what happens to the monasteries, they've had a whole life, right? So 10 years before the Arabs conquered Egypt, you had the Persians who came through Egypt, and they totally wiped everyone and everything out. And the monasteries, like, slowly were just, like, coming back to life from, like, in between the Persian and the Arab conquests. So I'd say even then they, like, helped play, like, a preservation role in that time period.
In your study of church history and the Middle East, what are some lesser known or overlooked events or figures that have had a significant impact on the development of Christianity?
I think a really important one is a bishop named Sawiris al-Muqaffa, and he was bishop in the 10th century. And he's the first bishop that is comfortable in Arabic to the point where he translates and writes like original theological compositions in Arabic. And I think that he's just pivotal. I think he's pivotal because he marries the culture outside of the church, like, with Christianity. And he gives us a vehicle for survival in the context.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people before him and after him that argue, okay, the Copts are going to lose their theology once they lose Coptic. Maybe to a certain extent. But I do think that this figure even created, like, a good vocabulary to serve as theology for the Copts in Arabic. So I think he's important.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many patriarchs that I think were pretty pivotal. I think Patriarch Abraham Zara, he's patriarch also the 10th century. He's the one who finds Simon the Tanner, and that's the whole miracle of, the mountain that moved in Muqattam. I think he's pivotal because like he's faced with an impossible situation. The story ends with that Fatimid caliph converting to Christianity and becoming a monk. And I just don't think that would happen without, like, a saint at the helm, you know. I'm trying to think of others. I think John the 19th, he's patriarch right before he dies, like maybe 2 years before Napoleon comes to Egypt, 1798. He also is, I think he's an important figure. There's other people who probably tell you, like Gabriel the Second, because he's the one that says like that Copts, in order to understand their worship and their liturgy, like they have to worship in a language they understand. So he kind of oversees a translation project into Arabic for the liturgy. Sure. Yeah, sure. I think John the 19th is fascinating because he is the patriarch before him and the patriarch after him were very, very friendly with the Catholic missions in Egypt, but he was not.
Huh.
Yeah. And he gives us, he has this fat book where it's like a collection of his sermons. It's called Kitab al-Durug, right, or the stairs. And each darug is a sermon of his, and it's good. It's a good testament to non-Chalcedonian early modern teaching. And he also, there's a bishop under him. His name is Seb al-Abah. He's called al-Abah because Abah means like coarse, like his voice is coarse, because he would give so many sermons and teach the people to the point where his voice became coarse. But anyway, the patriarch entrusted him to write a letter to the papal legate, whose name was Bartholomew, to Egypt, right? So the Pope in Rome would send like representatives to like all these different places and ask the churches to like be in communion with Rome, which in the early modern period meant basically treason for the church, right? It meant that your loyalty is to Rome, and like God knows what the Egyptian state would have thought of that. And so like the two patriarchs before him are like friendly, nobody signs anything, but they're friendly. This patriarch says no, and he argues that the people have to know their own traditions so that they're not like enticed by the foreigners, which I think is still a thing in Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm sure we've all experienced it.
Yeah.
So I think he's really admirable for that. And the bishop under him, Amba Yuseb. Amba Yuseb is buried in St. Anthony's Monastery. And it's said that...
Like here?
No, sorry.
No.
Red Sea. The Red Sea.
Sorry, I don't know where, like, my head is at.
It's the rain.
It's the rain, yeah.
So it's said that his body is still, like...
Oh.
Like, his body didn't decay. And you could see, like, his knee is, like, bent.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of want to see all this stuff. Like, every place she mentions, I'm like, okay,
I feel like we make an itinerary and just do a global trip.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And just podcast from around the world. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you how I was received. And the first class I ever taught was in Egypt.
No way.
Wow.
It was, it's part of an American program, so you had to take the TOEFL, like you had to get a certain exam, a certain score on the exam to be able to be accepted in the program, but I was kind of just standing there like, how did these people get good scores? Anyway, I walked into the class, my boss gave me a nice introduction. It was about 35 people, 3 women.
Wonderful.
I would say more than half were priests and monks.
Monks?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Like older monks.
Yeah.
Like I was nervous. I was so nervous. And I was, at the time, I was 26 at the time.
That's impressive.
I don't know about impressive.
No, like
girl, it was scary.
I mean, I'm sure it's terrifying.
Yeah, I was absolutely terrified. So I went in there, I introduced the class, I said, this is what we're going to be doing in the class, and the class itself was intimidating. It was Oriental Orthodox Church history, so, like, the Oriental churches from Chalcedon to the present day, all of them. So, like...
yeah. Wow.
It was a big deal.
Like...
it was like a survey course, but, like, still, like, it's... Anywho, I went in, introduced the class, said this is what we're going to be doing, and this is the point of the class, and like, this is a little bit about me, and I'm here to help you do this, and this is what I expect of you, and this is what you can expect of me. And some guy let me talk for 15 minutes, and then he raises his hand in the back, and he goes, "Wait, you're the professor?"
Wait.
No. See, I was waiting the entire time. I was like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? Like, something is going to happen.
So, I mean, you have to, like, at that point, just, like, listen, this is happening, and I am who I am, and this is the journey we're going on. I literally looked at him and went, yes, I am. Is there another question that you have for me?
Yeah, good. As you should. As a girl.
Yes.
And
yes.
I still remember, like, where he was sitting.
Just any class you teach from this point forward, anyone in that particular seat or, like, area, I don't like
vibes,
you.
Bad aura.
This is not good. I immediately don't like you.
I think the worst part, though, was that the first 2 days of lecture were quite difficult.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people were used to listening to a woman or having to listen to a woman, and I don't think and a young one, I was 26 at the time, like, I'm not sure I would have listened to me. And then everything I'd said, like, I'd based my lectures on, like, the most recent literature that had come out on the topic. And so I remember there was an Abuna sitting in the front in the first lecture. I think he raised his hand like every 15 minutes and was like, that's wrong because someone wrote this book with this title and they said XYZ. And I said, yes, that's right. They also wrote that book in 1992. And there have been studies since then. And this is what I'm, like, trying to present.
Was that difficult for you with it being an Abuna? Like, because I feel intimidated around Abunas. So, like, to be, like, I get what you're saying, but you're wrong. Like, to a priest.
I mean... yeah, on some level, yes, yeah. But I also, like... I wasn't totally unprepared.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like, no,
I'm sure you were very ready, like...
But I'm just saying, like, that reception, if you're talking about, like, a woman and, like, that sort of... Yeah, like, that happens all the time. And I would say even, like, most... I'm quite used to it now. I go to Egypt a lot for work and for research. And there's some sort of, like, testing, you know, like... Okay, she's just a woman. And sometimes I just go by myself. So, like, okay, that's not very... you know, in Egypt, you have to be, like, under someone's protection or something, right? You just can't be, like, trying to navigate that world on your own. And so there's a lot of, like, testing that happens. And to this day, I mean, it happens to this day. It happened, like, 2 weeks ago. We were at this monastery in the Said, in Nagi Hammadi, called Saint Balamun. Now, Nagi Hammadi is, like, there's this mountain where they found the Nag Hammadi codexes, right, which are Gnostic. It's a Gnostic corpus, all written in Coptic. And so, like, academia just had a field day with that, you know. But anywho, on that same mountain lived Abba Palamon, who taught monasticism to Pachomius. And he's, like, a lesser known saint. And so he has this monastery, this ancient monastery that they've revived. They said that I still have to check this. It's the priest that I was speaking to. They say that it's not attested to in any of the sources after the 6th century. So I still have to, like, I still want to look into that myself. But anyway, so he was standing there talking about this monastery, and it has some really cool like woodwork on the icon screen that I've never seen before, with colors that I've never seen before. And I'm not familiar with the Said. My family's not from the Said, and so I never go. I had the opportunity just this last month, and so I took it. But I was kind of like, I don't know if this is common for the Said or not, because like we don't see it in Bahri, you know. And so I asked him like what year was the icon screen from, and I was standing with a friend, and he was a young priest. He'd been a priest for a year, and he started explaining the origin of the ostrich egg to us, and we were like,
that wasn't the question.
Yeah, and my friend was like, why is he talking like that? Why is he talking like we don't know what this is? That's not what we asked. Why is he going into this? Doesn't he know that like we know this? Like we're servants at church. Why wouldn't we know this? And so I was just kind of like tub-tubbing. I was like, it's okay, love. We know what he's doing. It's okay. I'll ask him later. And she's like, you had a specific question, and he went into this specific, and I was like, it's fine.
I feel like that's me and Claudia. Like, and you're like, what is this guy doing?
And I'm like, it's okay. We're gonna talk about this later. Just not right now.
So I knew though that like if the Lord wills, I will have another conversation with this man, and I will get an answer to my question. If he doesn't, it's fine. I don't need to know. So we had like, I mean, you guys know like monasteries in Egypt. So like we went to like the canteen and the bookstore after. And he met us in the bookstore, and then he was talking to one of the guys there who was about 10 years younger than me. Younger. And so they were like having a legitimate conversation about the historical like sources and stuff, and then, or about like the historical attestations to this monastery. And so I went in and said, I want to know what sources attest to this monastery. And then he said all the sources before the 6th century. So then I named the medieval sources, and I said, so we have nothing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he looked at me and went, what do you do?
Oh.
And I said, I'm a church historian. And he looked at me and went, and you let me go on like that for an hour in the church? Which then I felt bad about. And I was like, no, I mean, it was great. Like, if I didn't know what an ostrich, if me or my friend didn't know what ostrich eggs were, we would have loved to hear that. But, yeah, so I'm all that to say there is like tension with that. I do think it is overcome by like personal encounter. I don't know how else to explain it. By personal encounter, and I think too by like as soon as you understand like the person in front of you and you're able to just like hold them more gently, all that stuff kind of goes away. But it like takes work to get there.
For sure. So our last question's kind of an interesting one. So you're a church historian. Based off your knowledge and your studies, how do you see the future of Christianity?
How do I see the history of how do I see the future of Christianity? Oh, based on what I know?
In the Middle East or in general, whichever you want to focus on.
Okay, based on church history and like just being a Christian and having a life in the church, I do believe it's the truth. And I think in the future more and more people are going to come to the truth. I think people are hungry, and I think even people like inside the church are going to be more I think that people outside are going to come in. I think the people inside are going to be more interested in the life in the church.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, shukran very much for joining us. Shukran very much for joining us.
That was the cutest. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
We were very excited for this episode, especially like I'm a big like I took every AP history class offered at my high school. But I honestly still
didn't know that. That's amazing.
That's my sciences.
I did not expect this episode to go where it did. And I loved it. So I just want you to know this is like my all-time favorite
episode. I'm not a history person, but I actually like enjoyed this so much. Like, you don't even get it.
Thank God.
Like it was very enlightening. We talked about things I never thought about before, and I think it's really important to have these lesser had conversations. And
well, thank you for having me. I did appreciate that. And you guys,
you.
they're just so kind. All these beautiful words coming out of you. It's just great.
Yeah.
No, you guys have a lovely podcast.
Oh, thank you.
And I love the name. But yeah, shukran very much. I love it.
Shokran very much.
And shukran very much to everyone who tuned in and listened. Please follow us on all our social media accounts. There you can receive updates and send in topic and speaker suggestions, which will be in the show notes. Shukran very much for listening, and
We'll see you next week.